Rabbi, welcome back to Yerushalmi Demai. We are in the fifth parak, right? Which is roughly Daf 39b. Okay. Now, we are talking about how we are separating maestros from a dough or bread of Demai. So, halekeach min hanachtem. You take a dough or a baked bread from a baker, and he makes bread in order to earn money by selling it all. So how are you going to take maser over here? The baker we're talking about here is an Amoretz, okay? That's how most want to learn. Okay, there's always a discussion whether he's a chaver or not. There's discussion over there, but let's go for now and say he's an Amoretz. So Naitel, now what we're going to do is take a part of the bread, of the loaf. We are going to have in mind a sort of an area, designate an area, kedei trumas maser v'chala. So we're going to afterwards separate the trumas maser and the chala. Right, the chala, remember, is 1 in 48, and trumas maser is roughly the 1% because it's a tenth of the maser, right, which is a tenth of what's left after the trumas has been taken. So we're going to, that's the amount which we will eventually give to the Cohen. So first we will designate virtually, right? This is your first virtual designation, okay? We will designate the part which we are going to give to the Cohen at the end of the hafrosha. So that's the amount that we intend to give eventually of Trumas Maser and Chala, right? Trumas Maser is 1 of 100. Trumas Maser is a tenth of the Maser Rishon, which is a tenth of the loaf. The Chala with the bakers is 1 in 48. And therefore the difference that you're going to be mafresh is 1 in 100 and also 1 in 48, which is slightly more than 3% of the loaf. Okay, now we're not separating it yet. First we're going to give names to the various elements, right? Trumas, Maser and Chala. And then we're going to cut a tiny bit maybe. At the moment we'll just cut it apart, and that will be a simon, a sign where the part that I'm going to separate will come from. Okay? And after that, once we've called the names of Maser and Chala, then we will separate it, we'll give it to the Cohen. Now, why we have to first leave it all connected, in order to say the nusach of the hafrosha, which the Mishnah will tell us, you have to give a name to the other things, Maser Rishon next to it. Remember, we can't call something Trumas Maser until we have Maser. So we have to call a name to the area of Maser. And also you have to separate Chalav, which is next to you, Minamukov. It's got to be close to what you're being mafresh. So that's why we're going to do it in this way, in this fashion. Okay.
And who are we saying is
what?
Who is saying the Chiv Schal?
So we're on this baker. Well, in the Gemara elsewhere, when we spoke about a baker, we said it always depended on how much he was selling, and what quantity, and whether he's selling it cheaply or not. Then, if he was selling it cheaply, then you put it on the buyer. If he was selling it more expensive, then let someone in. If it was more expensive, then then we said it was on the baker. But unfortunately, here we're assuming now. We'll discuss it. We're assuming now the baker's in Amares, so therefore we don't assume that the baker took everything. So therefore we have to. So the kach min anachton. So what was the case of Maser? So we said, so you are having in mind your virtual future separation of your 3%, which will cover your Trumas Maser and your Chala, and you'll give it to the Cohen. And you say, 1/100th of what I have here in this loaf. So this will be next to the part that I've designated, Maser, Usha HaMaser, and the rest of the Maser as well. That's the Maser Rishon, which is another 9/100th. Will be in the rest of the loaf, Samuch line next to it. So basically you're having in mind, we're just starting the fifth parak, yeah? So you're having in mind that I've got my 100th, which I'm designating as part of my bit to separate, and another 9/100ths next to it will be Maser, all right? And that is now my Maser now. So, and the 1 of the 100th, which I've designated, will be the bit that I'm going to be mafresh, which is that designated area. Okay, 9/100ths we said next to it, I'll end up keeping, right? The Maser Rishon at this stage, I'm going to keep that. But that's the process. So you've got to, in order to make the Trumas Maser, you have to separate the Maser, right? So we've got to have the Maser element in order to have the Trumas Maser, okay? Why the baker only separates 1 in 48, but Abaye separates 1 in 24, And here, if the person, though the person buying it is a balabais, but you only have to separate 1 and 48 because challah is challah at the time of making the dough. The dough was done through the baker. Therefore, you also only have to separate more. You don't have to do more than what the baker's obligation was. Okay? Right, let's carry on. And actually, so what we're saying here, the 9 portions of the Maser Rishon you'll end up keeping. So that stays in the loaf. So it's the only bits that you're going to take off are the Trumas Maser and the Challah bits, which you'll separate soon. Okay. Right, let's carry on. This 1 in 100 in my designated area, She'asisi Maser, which first I made Maser, that 100th also Trumas Maser Olav will now be the Trumas Maser on the rest of the Maser. And the rest of that area which I have designated, so remember you designated roughly 3% in total, the rest of it is Challah. This idea, by the way, 1 in 48, some poskim say that if you have a challah or whatever it is and a bit's broken off, as long as 1 in 48 has not lost more than 1 in 48, you can treat it as a shalem. You can treat it as a whole for lechem mishnah. And same with the matzah as well, right? Because the baker always took off 1 in 48, you see?
But the small was baked.
What? I know, but the idea then, some of the poskim bring down, as long as it's less than 1/48 missing, you can call it shalom anyway. So there we are.
That's like 2%.
Yeah. Now, what about the rest of the loaf which you're keeping in your hand? Maser Sheni, which is either bitzvayna b'droima, you want it to be in the north or in the south of the loaf, and that will be redeemed onto the money which I have designated for that purpose. Right? Okay. That's like 1/10 of what's left in the loaf, and you designate an area, 1/10 in the north or in the south. You need to designate it. You can't call it master without designating a place. You don't have to physically separate it from the loaf in a situation where you're redeeming it onto money. You only have to redeem it onto its own value, right? You don't have to add a 5th because it's Demai here. And of course, you have to take that money to Yerushalmi. Okay? So, now we said in the Mishnah, so you are the purchaser now on the part of Maser, which is Mafresh. He said 1/100th, which is here, is Maser. So he says, wait a minute, 1/100th of what's here? It sounds like from all that's here throughout the loaf, it comes out you're separating Maser of Demai, Af al Hachala, even on that Chala element as well. Is that what you're doing? Now the question is, what comes first, Chala or Maser? Where's Chala in the list? He says, Chala chayeves b'Demai. Okay, is Chala obligated in Demai that you have to separate Maestris on Chala? Like Tanina, have we not learned Chala Sama Aretz Mamadova, but Turin Mina Demai? It's exempt from Demai. Chala is part of from Demai. Because Chala, people treated it as the importers like Truma, right? They were very careful with Truma. And you don't have to assume that there should be any Maestr obligation here. We've learned out Mishnah that it's Chaim to be Mafresh Chala from Master Shul Demai. So the Gemara answers Rav Acha b'Shem Rav Bun Bar Chia b'Shem Rabbi Yosef b'Shem Chanina de Beis Shammai and Mishnah's view of Beis Shammai who argue on the Mishnah earlier on. They hold Chala is obligated in Demai. But Tani came with learned Rishon ben Yehuda and Mishum Rabbi Shimon Chala Beis Shammai mechayvin. Yes, Beis Shammai obligates the Demai, so you have to separate Maestros and everything. Beis Hillel Paitrin, Beis Hillel exempt it. Okay. Okay. Now, Klum Amru Beis Shammai, but when did Beis Shammai say that Chalas Amaretz is Chai B'Dmai, and it's Davar Shehu La'achila, something was going to be eaten? If you buy produce from Amaretz for sowing, or Lebehema for animals to eat, or Kemach La'eres, flour for tanning skins, Shemen Laner and fuel, Shema ain't a potter B'Dmai, even according to Beis Shammai should be potter then. You're potter because if you buy produce for the sake of other uses, you're potter from Demai. We don't find anywhere Beis Shammai argue on that. Now, Mishnah, you're taking a dough or bread from a baker in Amaretz, you assume it's Tameh. So even Beis Shammai would agree the Chala you've got to be Mafresh is part of a Maestros of Demai. It's Tameh. It's not going to be eaten by anyone, right? It needs to be burnt. So even if there's no stira between our Mishnah and the Mishnah earlier on, which Patas Chala Amaretz B'Dmai, we have that contradiction between what we've learned in the ratio of the Mishnah, if you buy Demai not for the sake of eating, you're potter according to everyone. So the Gemara answers, we can still explain our Mishnah according to Beis Shammai. Ela megabel isasa b'mei peres. You know what? This baker, who's an Amaretz, he made his dough with fruit juice, 100% fruit juice, where Eve is not machshir, it doesn't make the food susceptible to receive tumah, okay? He didn't use water, so the dough is tahar, and the challah which is taken is fitting to be eaten. And therefore, you can be mafresh maestros of Demai according to the view of Beis Shammai. Okay, so that's what we're saying, that he used fruit juice. Now, it's not musha at all to receive tumah. Like then this one says, wait a minute. Like the Mishnah in Challah there, that if it's made with fruit juice, that's all very well according to that one view. The Chachamim argue, and they say, look, a dough which is made with fruit juice is completely potter from Challah. Right? Because the Mishnah in Challah, it talks about a dough which is made with made peros. That's what Yerushalmi Ben Yehuda said this. Okay, it's full yom. Okay, so Oichel Kabul Tumah. Okay, there's a discussion there. Others argue. They hold no. So here as well now, Hakarabanin, but according to the Chachamim who patter this dough from Challah anyway, if it's made with fruit juice, the whole obligation doesn't start. Like, you can't fit in our Mishnah that he made the dough with fruit juice. It's not Chaim of Challah at all. You have to tell me it was made with water, and that's why it's Chaim Challah. So the question comes back that the bread of an Amoritz, which was susceptible to receive Tumah, is Becheskas Tamea, and the Challah that you separate from it needs to be burnt. And it's not Chaim Demai according to everyone, because it's not there for fitting for anyone to eat. So the Gemara says another way to answer the Mishnah. We are talking about Challah, which is Tahar, and it is Chaim Demai, and yes, you do have to separate the maestros for that Challah, according to Beis Shammai. And if you want to answer, our Mishnah is talking about being mafresh Challah Demai, and it holds like Beis Shammai, like Rabbi Yochanan. Surely we can do it. This is whether, like this wording here, like Rabbi Yochanan Makan, ba'isa b'tahara. Here we're talking, in the Perek Sheni, we're talking about a baker who makes the dough in Tahara. Khan, in the 5th Perek, ba'isa b'tumah, he's making his dough in a state of tumah. So according to this, our Mishnah is talking about a baker who's making a dough in a state of tumah. You can't tell me it's Demai and Beis Shammai, because the whole thing is tameh. Therefore, the challah is not fitting to be eaten, and it's completely potter, even according to Beis Shammai. Ela kubelaza, drubelaza amakan bekan. Whether it's our Mishnah or the Mishnah in the 2nd Perek, but the baker is doing his dough in a state of purity, right? And it's huksha to be mekabel tumah if it touches tumah, but he guarded it. He was very careful with it. Okay, he was careful to stop it becoming tameh. Now, we have actually a contradiction between our Mishnah and Perek Beis. There's other answers given for that. There he talks about the difference between the baker. Is it mass production or not mass production? And the price is, does he make a lot on it or does he not make a lot on it, as we said before? Right, our Mishnah is talking about is selling a lot in one go, where we're allowing him to sell it without being ma'aser and mafresh challah. Okay, so there we are. So basically, based on this chart, we're talking about pas, which is tahar, and the challah is fitting to be eaten, and it's chai b'dmai according to Beis Shammai, who obligate challah with dmai. Now the problem is, our Mishnah is talking about pas, which is tahar, okay, and the baker is trusted on taharas. Now, if that's the case, why should there be a din of dmai at all? If we trust him as far as taharas is concerned, as far as purity is concerned, right? The usual rule, if you're believed on taharas, you should be believed on maestros, right? You should be believed on maestros. It comes out this chaver is believed on maestros, and we're not talking about Amoritz then. If he's trust him so much on taharas, then he's not an Amoritz. Then he probably took all the maestros that were required to be taken, and he separated challah properly. But our Mishnah says you have to take maaser from this bread. So obviously we're talking about Amoritz who's not Ne'eman, who's not believed on maestros. So the Gemara doesn't actually answer. So the Gemara actually, does say, he said, when we said he's believed on taharas, he's believed on maestros, it's where you are eating with this person, the guest. You are the guest. Someone who's trusted on taharas, you can rely on him that he took the ma'aser which he's bringing you, and you can eat it without taking ma'aser. But he's not got a din of a chaver in every respect if he's not taken on that standard, okay? And therefore, if you're buying things from him, you cannot rely on the fact that the ma'aser has been taken. You follow this. Even though he's believed on taharas, it's one thing when you're a guest, but when you're buying from him, you cannot assume that all the ma'asros have been taken. And bring a proof of this, because like in Tanya, never on the taharas, never on the maestros. That you are believed on taharas, you're believed on maestros. So to me say, and on this price, Rabbi Yana, Rabbi Shmuel Ba'ama, he says, another time, and that's all very well. So when you're staying with him, as far as people buying from him, mass sales, this person, Eina Neman, you cannot assume all the maestros have been taken until he takes on publicly to be responsible in all these elements. In our Mishnah, we're talking about the baker sells to the masses. You're buying from the baker. You're buying from him. You're not staying with him. Therefore, he may be believed as far as Taharis is concerned, but you can't rely on him as far as maestros, and you have to separate maestros and challah from that which you're buying from him. Okay, so that's how we've answered that. Mishnah is talking about you're being mafresh maestros on the challah according to Beis Shammai. There is an obligation of challah maestros of demai because we're talking about it's tahar and it's taken to be eaten and not for burning. But although we know he guarded the dough in a state of purity, he's not believed to say he took maestros from it, and you have to separate maestros on the challah, and your mafresh maestros also on the challah because it is tahar. Now the Gemara brings another answer to the contradiction between our Mishnah and the Mishnah of the first parak, which patters challah from demai. He learned the answer from the Mishnah later on, which is after our Mishnah, where it says, if you want to separate from your fruit truma or trumas maseh ka'achas, so you got your truma, which is your 2%, your trumas maseh is your 1%, and you want to take basically you take a share of 1 in 33 1/3. It's roughly 3%, and you say 1 of the 100 which is here next to this should be chulin. For now, it's chulin until I give it a name of truma gedola, and then I'll give the name maser rishon. I'll make the first one trumas maser out of the maser which I have, and the rest, the other 2%, is truma gedola. So kamada teva tamam. Just like you have to say over there, when you're saying 1 in 100 which is here, it's 1 in 100 which you have chutz min aroy likadosh l'shem truma, which is apart from that which is going to be truma. You're not mafresh maser rishon and trumas maser on truma gedola, right? Truma gedola has to be first in the order. Whatever comes first is potted from the next one that comes down the line, right? Your truma doesn't have to have maser taken, right? First you take truma, then you take maser what's left. So the same thing, you don't have to be mafresh for what comes later. But hacha, so here as well in our Mishnah, when it says 1 in 100, which is here and should be maser, it means the 1 in 100 which I have, apart from that which is going to have a name challah, you don't have to be mafresh maser and truas maser on challah, and that's like Beis Hillel in the Brisa that challah is part of from maestros. Okay. And now, once we've taught you the way of the order of calling the names of maser rishon and truas maser, it talks about the name of challah. So Tanina, we've learned. Now, where is challah in the list? Where does it come? Where is the order of challah? So we've learned in our Mishnah, challah bein rishon l'sheni. Now, we spoke about calling challah once you've done maser rishon and you've not done maser sheni yet. Now, why is maser rishon coming before challah? The Torah calls challah truma. Truma comes before everything else because it's called reishis, okay? If that's the case, challah, which is also called truma, should be coming before maser rishon. So Rabbi Yaina v'Shei Zira, so it says challah ein ba mishum bal ta'acher. Basically, there's no issur with challah of changing the order of things. The Torah was not particular only on the seder of bikurim, trumas, maestros. It seems challah didn't really matter where it went in the list. Rabbi Yosef Zira, he says ein mishnah mura al seder. The truth is no, don't learn from the Mishnah that that's the order. You do need to put challah first. And if you're mafresh it after maser rishon, you are transgressing. But the Tana wasn't careful in his wording. The Tana wasn't being specific in the order, but really you should put challah first. Now the din of the Gemara is based on the understanding that in our Mishnah you have to separate the matanas in the order. He says, "V'lo b'demai nan kiyamin." But wait a minute, we're talking about demai here. Like Kain Ara Rabbi Bar Rabbi Chia b'Shem Rabbi Yochanan Masnisa b'demai. Our Mishnah is talking about demai, and that's why you can do things in the wrong order because we're talking about demai here. Oh, vadai, if it's definitely tevel, lie, you can't change from the order. So what he's saying is, when we said, if you change from the order in demai, it doesn't really matter. And even the chatchila you're allowed to change because demai, you're allowed to change the order. Here in our Mishnah, we talk about demai. So how are you telling me, challah, it doesn't matter where you put it? No, it's because it's demai here. Why does Rabbi Yossi need to push away? We weren't careful with the order. No, with demai, there's no order at all with demai. Remember, demai is always after the event. Probably everything's been done. It's only a chiyuv dravanon in case something wasn't being done. So the Gemara answers, the machlokes Reb Zira and Rabbi Yossi is not fitting in with our Mishnah. In the case of our Mishnah, everyone says, yes, you can do whatever you want, order you want. But tiny Reb Chia learned in Brisa, which mentions challah between Maser Rishon and Maser Sheni. After Vada, even with Vadai, definite tevel, challah comes after Maser Rishon, before Maser Sheni. And this was the argument. He says so one opinion says right, there's no problem where you put it. He says Aid Mishnah. That Brisa of Reb Chia Amora said no, it wasn't right. And Taktim Challah Rishon. Really, you should put challah right before Maser Rishon. You should put it right at the beginning. Don't put it before Truma, because Truma is chal in the goren, right? When all the grain has been processed before the Chiyuv Challah, right? He says if you delay the hafrosha's Truma until it's become a dough, then you have to still do the hafrosha of Truma before Challah, right? Although Maser Rishon is also in the goren, but Challah comes first, because just like Truma comes first. Because challah is called truma, yeah? You got that phrase, truma. And challah, it's where it says rashis as well, so it comes first. It doesn't come before truma. Truma always comes first. Truma is called rashis, and the chiyuv comes before challah. Okay. Now, the Gemara asked Rabbi Yossi that you have to separate challah before Maser Rishon with definite tevel. Me'ato, if that's the case, lo tehei challah chayavis b'maestris. But maestris, you chayamin b'challah. Now, if challah comes first, then as we said, there's always a rule. If you offer something first, there's no obligation for what comes later. So challah should have no maestris obligation at all, because maestris comes later on. But maestris, you chayamin b'challah, and maestris should have an obligation challah because challah comes first. Because kol hakodev is chaver, whatever comes first, chaver is chayav boy, is obligated with what comes first. But it's not chayav in itself. So challah, if coming before maestris with tevel, could Rabbi Yossi, shouldn't be obligated in Maestris. Mishnah says challah of Demai is potter from Maestris, implying that challah of Tevel is chayav in Maestris.
This would be mashma that the chiyuv is challah on the baker, because the lekeach would come once the loaf is already baked.
Yeah, normally it's when it's in the dough.
But usually it's
the kneading.
Challah from an amaretz, ready baked.
We're
loaf,
worried it wasn't done.
So you'll do it anyway. So you'll be doing it. After all the Trumas and Maestros, you were doing the challah.
Yes, true. It will come later on. It's Demai. Normally, you would do it in the dough stage, right? When you're making the dough, that's when the obligation starts. So here, challah of tevel sounds like it's chayav maestros. Now, this challah, there must obviously not be a seder when you need to be mafresh it. It could be mafresh it after maestros as well. That's the only way you can say it's chayav maestros. And that's not like Rabbi Yossi, who says, no, you have to do it before maestros. But Tari came, so the Gemara answers, if you are making a dough from tevel, whether you separated the challah before the truma, or ben shehigdim truma lechallah or truma before the challah, masha also was done is done. Now, whatever happens, don't start eating the challah until the truma has been separated, and truma shouldn't be separate until you mafresh the challah. As you see, whatever comes first, seder hafresh is not chayav the other one. That wasn't said as far as challah. Truma definitely has to come before challah, and still we say that if you did the truma first, it's still chayav and challah. So the same thing, challah is chayav b'maestros. Even though min adin it comes first according to Rabbi Yossi, it seems challah there's no exemption. It sounds like challah is still chayav. This din of whatever comes later is exempt from it. Doesn't seem to apply with challah. So the Gemara comes back to the Pirush of Mishnah according to Rabbi Yoina of Shem Rav Zira, that challah, it could be there's no problem of changing the order. The fact that Mishnah mentions challah between Maser Rishon and Maser Sheni sounds like Minat Torah. It doesn't really matter when you can separate challah. Maybe with Rabbanan you have to separate it after Maser Rishon before Maser Sheni. Now, why are the Chachamim saying this? V'lama kadma Rishon. Why should Maser Rishon come before challah? Why do we put it in the middle? Surely we should put challah first because it says rashis. So the Gemara answers, Renei shekadma legoren. Maser Rishon comes before challah because the chiyuv of hafrosha comes while it's already in the store there, when the malachas the process has been finished, before it's been ground for flour, made into a dough, and that's when the challah obligation comes. So even if you delayed the hafrosha of maser until after it's become a dough and chayav challah, but Maser Rishon really came first, the chiyuv came first. Marei Sheni kadma legoren. Now Maser Sheni also was already in the goren in this processing before the chiyuv challah came about. Now, if you're saying wherever the chiyuv came first should be first in hafrosha, which should be mafresh Maser Sheni first, but the Mishnah says no, you put challah between Maser Rishon and Maser Sheni. Amar Matalia, b'dina shetidim challah l'kol. You know something? What challah should really come before all maasros, because challah is called reishis. V'lama kadma rishon. Why maser rishon first? They should kadma lagoin because the chiv hafashah came already in the store in the processing there before chiv challah came about. V'kasu by reishis, and you have that extra word reishis as well. And therefore it says reishis like challah, right? Just like truma has got reference reishis, and since you find it with challah, therefore it comes before truma comes before challah. But maser sheni avapisha kadma lagoin. You're right, the processing might have happened first, but there's no reference to reishis there. Ain't kasu by reishis. Therefore, challah, which has got a reference reishis, comes first. So that's why you have maser rishon, then you have challah, and then you have maser sheni. Right. All right. So now we spoke about how you can be mafresh demai in one go on all the various matalas you're giving to the Cohen. We spoke about challah and trumas maser. Now, how you can be mafresh similarly now from tevel, tevel vadai. You've got truma gedola and you've got trumas maser. So right to the havish truma, you want to separate truma or trumas maser ke'achad and trumas maser in one go. Noitel, again, you have a designated area, and you're going to designate echad mishloishim v'shloisha v'shlish, which is 1 in 33 and a third, which is roughly 3%. We say echad v'meh ma sheyesh kan, 1 in 100, which I have in the fruit. Harezeh b'sadzeh. This is part of my designated area. For now, it is chulin, right? For now, it is chulin. It remains tevel for now. Usually, chulin means fruit that has already been rectified, but here it doesn't mean that. Here it means fruit that you've not yet given it a name truma or maser. You've not yet done anything with it. Usha'ah, the remainder of the designated area, the remainder 2%, truma ala kol. That is truma on all the fruit. And now you go to that 1 in the 100, which you said at the beginning it should stay chulin for the time being. Or mea chulin sheyeshkan, that 1 in 100 which I said should be chulin. Harezeh b'sadzeh, next to that designated area is maser, ushah maser, and the remaining maser, which is samuch is next to it. So that 100th, with I made maser in that designated area. So zeh shel sisi maser, that which I made maser in that designated area, and now you've sort of separated the remaining maser, and now that 100th is also trumas maser olav, is now the trumas maser for that maser rishon. The shah and the remaining area of the designated area is challah. Maser sheni b'tzvona b'drom, maser sheni is in the north or the south, and b'chulal ala mois, and is profaned onto the money which I have designated for it. Okay. Now this idea of 1 in 100, it doesn't mean all that there is. It's 1 in 100 of the quantity which will remain after separating truma gedola. Okay, that is the obligation of maser, right? So he says here, let's say you set aside a saw, you're saying 98% of the third of the saw will remain chulin. Eventually it will come to us maser. We've got different numbers. All right, we'll move on. Tani we learned in the Brisa. Harezeh hafish truma. You want to separate truma gedola or trumas maser v'challah ka'achas in one go. Noitel, you can be masaman. You can designate kedei truma or trumas maser and challah ka'achas in one go. V'kamahein. So how much is that? Echad me'esrim. Basically, it's 5%. So now we're adding in what we got here. We've got the truma, which is 2%. You've got the trumas maser, which is 1%. And you got the challah, which is another 1 in 48, which is roughly 2%. So that's how you get your 5%. Right? Echad me'esrim is roughly 5%. And you say, Echad me'esrim kan, 1 in the 100, which I have. Arehem b'sadzeh. This is, for now, chulin tevel. For now, it's nothing. It's not proper chulin. It's not fruit which has been corrected. It's chulin, which has not yet had a name of truma or maser on it. And it's still tevel as it was. Right? So that 100th is still nothing. I haven't decided what it is. And another 1 in 48, which is next to it, right next to that 100th, which I said for the time being is chulin. That also for the time being is chulin. I've done nothing with it, so I've not yet given it a name challah yet. The hasha, the rest of the designated area, so that's another 2%, is truma kol. That is truma for the whole lot. And now you're going to talk about the bits which you separated at the beginning, which you hadn't decided what they were. From that designated area, which for now was still chulin, tevel, that 100th, which I said for the time being should be tevel, also maser, that is now becoming maser rishon, and of course, and the remaining maser rishon is all leading across it. Or shah maser samuch lai, and the rest of the Maser is next to it, which is not designated area, the other 900ths. Now, out of that designated area, which I said is the 1 in 100th, which was Maser, that should be also Trumas Maser Alav. That is now going to be Trumas Maser on the rest of the Maserishan. V'hashar, and the remaining, that which I've left before Chulin when I didn't designate it yet, that will be Chala. That remaining 1 in 48, that will be the Chala. Yeah? Or Maser Sheni, B'tzvayna, B'dromai, and Maser Sheni is going to be in the north or in the south of the loaf, or whatever it is, Mechula Lamois, and it's redeemed onto the money that I have designated for that purpose. Okay? Rosh Shmuel Bar Nachman Shem Rabbi Yonasan. Now, how many brachas are you going to make when you're designating all these things? So the first opinion says, Sofer Varech Chomesh brachas, 5 brachas, 1 bracha for each name that you're calling. Truma, Maser Rishon, Trumas Maser, Chala, Maser Sheni. But Tani Reb Chia learned, Kaila learned, bracha, you put them all into 1 bracha. Right? You're separating all 5 in one go. So you do 1 bracha that includes them all. Some say the Lashon is Lahafrish Trumas and Maestras. Trumais includes Truma Gedola, Trumas Chala, and Maestras includes Maser Rishon and Maser Sheni. Some say, even in 1 bracha, you have to single them out. So Sheki Rishonah says Lahafrish Truma or Maser or Trumas Maser, V'chala or Maser Sheni. You have to say all 5, according to some. Now the Mefarshim ask, if you're going to include all 5 in 1 bracha, we usually have a rule, Einais in mitzvahs, chaviras, right? You can't just throw all the mitzvahs together. There's another bracha, Al Pidyon Maser Sheni. This is a 6th bracha. But the word doesn't mention it. Sounds like Rabbi agrees you can't include it with the others. You can't include it with the hafrosha elements, right? Pidyon Maser Sheni. It's completely separate. We only mentioned the brachas where Rabbi argues on Rabbi Yonasan, where you include it together, but not a bracha where everyone agrees it's a separate bracha in its own right. Okay? Ad Kedon Ben Levi. So it's all very well. Now, how do we learn? You can be mafish Truma and Trumas Maser in one go. Now, that's all very well. You can be mafish or Cohen or Levi like that, because they're Zoycha and the Maserishan for themselves. They can separate Trumas Maser out of the Maserishan because they can acquire it, right? But Yisrael, if he's going to tell me that he's mafish Trumas Maser, well, how can he nimsa mafish out of Hashem Shalai? How can he mafish Trumas Maser out of Maser when the Maser is not his? It belongs to a Levi, right? He's being mafish something which is not his for something which is not his. Mafish should be chal. Maser Rishon, and you're separating Trumas Maser is not his, belongs to the Levim. The Mishnah of the Brisa, which tell you how to be separating Truma and Trumas Maser in one go, must be Cohen and Levi, but Yisrael can't do that. Now, the Gemara does explain, why does the Mishnah have to tell me first that 1 of the 100 should be Chulin for the time being, and after that, we make the remainder, the bit which is designated as Truma, and then to give it a name Maser and Trumas Maser, and that 100th, which I set aside, and I never said exactly what it was. Now, we could have gone a much simpler way. First Maser Rishon, right? First called Maser Rishon was Trumas Maser, and then after that Truma Gedola. Why not change the order? Do Maser Rishon and then Trumas Maser, and then sort out the Truma. Well, first Truma Gedola, and then Maser Rishon and Trumas Maser, without first saying the bit which I'm going to be Trumas Maser will for the time being be Chulin. Why say all that? So he says you can't do that, because if you did, if you already gave a name Maser on that 1 in 100, right, together with the other 9 next to it, and then you want to separate Truma, you can't do that, Rabbi. So you can't give a name Maser before Truma, right? Truma has to come first. Nimsa Magdim, you end up putting the Afrosha of Maser before the Afrosha of Truma Gedola. You can't do that. And if you're going to tell me, you're not going to say first that 1 in 100 will be Chulin for the time being. You'll give it a name straight away, Truma, right? Truma Gedola on the 200th. So straight away give it a name Truma. If you do that, and then you give the name Maser on the remainder, you'll end up, if you just start by saying 2%, you'll end up making too much or too little on your maestris. You're going to be mafish Trumas Maser less than 100th, or maybe more than 100th, and not exactly 100th. We want you to be exactly 100th. We don't want it to be more or less. And you shouldn't do this. We've learned in the Brisa, if you end up bringing less from your maestris, your Masroisa Mutukani, your Masros might be sorted, but your remaining fruit will have trouble. Or Peroisa Mukukolin. Amadif al Masros, when you increase your Maisa too much, Masroisa Mukukolin, your Masros will be ruined, or Peroisa Mukukolin, but your fruits might remain okay. So basically, we want you to be Masamen, we want you to designate how much you're doing, which is 3% from all the fruit, but not exact. And first, we want to say, out of the designated area, 100th exactly, for now, will be Chulin. We don't want you to give a name Maser Rishon meanwhile, because we don't need to give a name Maser Rishon before we give you a name of Truma. And after that, you give a name Truma Gedola on the remaining, which is 200th Bekiruv, not exact. And after that, you can go and give a name Maser and Trumas Maser on the 100th, which is what you've set aside as Chulin for the time being. So he's got an example here. He says if you've got 100 sar, you have to separate 10 sar for Maser Rishon, and the other 90 will be Chulin. If you only separate 9 sar for Maser Rishon, then you're going to rectify 90 sar out of the produce. 81 will be Chulin, and 9 will be Maser Rishon, and the 10 sar will remain Tevel. So it comes out that the 9 sar that you separated from Maser will be a bit extra as far as Maser Rishon is concerned. Remember, this is the idea that you're separating too much Maser, your remaining fruit will be in trouble. But the remaining 91 sar will be a mixture of Tevel and Chulin with Tukonin. There'll be 81 Chulin, but 10 Tevel. And you won't be allowed to eat it. They're mixed up with all forbidden mixtures. And similarly, if you've got 100 sar Maser Rishon, if you separate only 9 for Trumas Maser, you should have done 10, but you only separated 9. So then, the 9 sar, that's fine, that would be makrish, that would be all Trumas Maser that the Cohen can eat. But the 91 remaining will be problematic. It'll be a mixture of Maser Rishon, which you've corrected, and Maser Rishon, which is still not had Trumas Maser separated against it. So again, you're going to have mixtures there. So if you don't do enough, so we want you to do exactly what's required. We want you to have Trumas Maser should be 100th of the mixture. Okay? Then just to finish, he says here as well, let's say the case of 100 sar, if you separate 11 sar for Maser, then the 89 is proper Chulin. Within that 11, 9 and 8 ninths in Maser Rishon, there's always a ninth of the Chulin which is corrected. So if you had 100 sar and you separated 10 for Maser, then that 10 is a ninth of the 90 which is corrected. If you're only Masakin 89, then Maser will be a ninth of the 89, which is 9 and 8 ninths, and the sar and the ninth, which are remaining, which you separated, will be tevel, because they never became maser, and there's no other tevel that you should have maser on it. It doesn't become chulin mesukan. You didn't separate any maser to cover it. So the 11 sar of maser will be a mixture of maser and tevel, which you won't be able to eat it. And if you had 100 sar of maser rishon, and you separated 11 sar for trumas maser, the 11 sar will be a mixture of Trumas Maser and Maser Rishon, which is not yet had Trumas Maser corrected for it. Okay, I think we will stop here.